maybe as a piano player, I've listened to these torch ballads or these expressions, Marlene Dietrich over the years, singing something that was tongue-in-cheek and yet there's a tragic quality to it. So Leather was written really in that vein. And it was one of those songs that some take months and months and months to develop and to craft. And that one came in about 10, 15 minutes. I think so much had happened over the last few weeks, which, again, it's part of your life. You run into people, you fall out with people, and you just are left there sometimes on your own, and a song waltzes in, and she's been with me ever since. I play her a lot still. You see, being at the bottom of the food chain in LA is a very good place to be as a songwriter. But if you're not at the bottom, what are you going to write about? Being backstage at this celebrity's party? For me, there wasn't a lot of stuff to work from. So I needed to crawl back into the underbelly, into a rawness. I'm always needing to be the observer, not the observed. And in your life, if you are the observed, then don't you see, how are you the one behind the camera? You're just not anymore. And to be a good writer, you have to be. So I fled into the desert, and I loved being there. The record was inspired being in New Mexico, and we recorded it there as well. It was originally going to be called God with the Big G, but that didn't seem to be going down very well. And a part of me thought, well, there are other ways to express that, the internal world of the female. So I thought Under the Pink did that. Not as obvious, doesn't hit you over the head. And I've been hitting people over the head for a while, so maybe the softer approach was the way to go. It didn't suffer for changing its name. I've always really questioned this whole one guy God thing. It just seems a little too simple in my brain. And if there is a guy, then there's gotta be a gal, or there wouldn't be little gods. So just naturally, everything has a male and a female, every species there is. What, except God? That just didn't make sense to me ever. So therefore, I do sometimes think that the biblical God is an underachiever, and that he needs a little bit of help and guidance, or to be turned out, because he seems very grumpy to me, especially biblically. Therefore, this song was somewhat of a love song. He needs a woman, that entity, that essence. It seemed to us, those of us that were making the video, along with the director, Melody McDaniel, that it was essential to acknowledge other cultures and their God. Sometimes, whoever we are, we think that our God is the only one, instead of everybody has their beliefs, and we can live in a world where they're all respected. And even now it seems like we can't really live so well in a world where we respect other people's beliefs. I have this friend who's from Brooklyn. She lives in London now, and she's somebody that if you met her name is Karen Binns, and she's black with white Jean Harlow hair. She's one of my best friends. She was a bridesmaid at my wedding. She has a way of talking like no one else on the planet. And so, hanging out with her, I lived across from this reggae shop in London, and they would be pumping music out all day, and I would be jamming in my flat across the street. So, I had made hours and hours of tapes of just me jamming away. And so when I got to New Mexico, I was hearing this groove that turned into Cornflake Girl. Karen and I used to see it as being white bread. They're the ones that will turn on you. We always saw ourselves as raisin girls, you see. It's more of a girl betraying another girl type of song. We realize women can be pretty vicious to each other. Without even lifting a finger, there's no blood. There are no knives or guns. We don't usually entertain that, such barbaric instruments. We don't need them. But we're brutal without them. Going back to being in New Mexico, and you see the influence of the church on the native people, and it begins to make you wonder, when you go into the history and you really realize what our history here is about and the genocide that's involved, it is unsettling. It's not necessarily going to make us feel so good. And the more that I researched it, and as I spent time with some of the native people at the different pueblos in the area, this song started to form itself. And there is a mixture that they have for their traditions as well as for Christianity. And this new hybrid creature has been created. And so I was trying to capture that within the song. Boys for Pele came at a time where, looking back, I have no idea if we were to go back and time travel now, if I would have made different choices. It was such a volatile time in my life. So many changes were happening. There's this phrase I used at the time, and it might make sense to you and it might not, which is stealing fire from the men. There was a conscious choice that I made to try and access my own dark prince, not through you guys, not needing the guys to hold the bad boy for me. I was going to be my own bad boy. And to do that, it doesn't just happen because you look in the mirror and decide to do that. It's finding something within yourself, so you're not dependent on the men for that. There is a fantasy that we can have of what we think is the kind of person we want to be with. And a lot of times you date somebody and you're with them because of a fantasy. And then you start thinking, what am I doing? This person is quite cruel. So when you hear a building tumbling down, the whole idea of what a relationship might have been, because you couldn't look, you didn't want to see also your shortcomings. You didn't want to see where you were needy and where you couldn't look at where another person really was. We thought that she was dying from the other side, that was the price she paid for not seeing the truth. And in a way, it was symbolic of a death. It was a death. Maybe not of the physical, but of a fantasy. And of a life you thought you were going to lead, that you thought you wanted. But once you realized what it really was, it was ripping you to shreds. So he really understood that, and I think when he was expressing it visually, we had talked and talked about it, and he came up with the storyboard, and it made sense to me.